3 spine-chilling true horror tales exposed. Discover haunted secret sinister legends. The little suburb of Oak Hollow was picture-perfect, a postcard community where kids laughed and played freely, but as the sun dipped below the horizon, the uninvited shadows crept in. Sarah's heart raced as she raced home from another grueling night as a nurse, the fluorescent lights of the hospital flickering in her mind. Exhausted, she just wanted to breathe. But the atmosphere felt thick, as if the night itself was waiting to swallow her whole. "Tommy?" she called, entering their small but cozy home. No reply. A tight knot formed in her stomach, a warning bell ringing in her head. Just last night, Tommy's panicked voice echoed in her mind, claiming something sinister lurked outside their window. "It's just the stray cats," she had said, but even then, a chill slithered down her spine. She had believed his fears were innocent, yet now dread hung in the air. The porch light flickered, casting eerie shadows on the ground. Glancing outside, she saw those dark figures looming along the tree line, almost cigarette smoke curling in the breeze. Nothing but stray cats, right? Deep down, her instincts screamed this wasn't right. She felt it in her bones. Then, she turned to see her neighbor, Mrs. Jenkins, typically a chatterbox, was nowhere to be found. Just the wind whispered between the cracks of the house. Suddenly, the doorbell rang, vibrating through the quiet night. Goosebumps covered her arms as she turned the knob slowly, revealing shadows and darkness but no one in sight. "Mom," he's back. Tommy shouted, eyes wide with fright, pulling her back. "I saw him." The shadow. Panic fluttered in her chest as a fear raw and suffocating started to seep into her mind. The news of unprecedented disappearances in their suburban paradise buzzed around her thoughts, grappling with nightmares she'd only whispered to herself. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Each walk with her dog turned into a heightened alert. Shadows danced just beyond the reach of the streetlights like mocking phantoms. Mrs. Jenkins' absence dug deeper into her bones, and to make matters worse, she could feel Jack's eyes following her, the handyman whose smile transformed into something cold whenever he caught her gaze. The words she overheard, "You can't let them know," echoed like a haunting lullaby, leading her to believe that safety lay far away. A tattered newspaper, hidden beneath the floorboards, caught her attention. The headline screamed of a young boy who vanished without a trace, a dark history lurking just beneath the surface of suburban bliss. The world twisted, contorted with her shaking hands, revealing how tightly her trust had been held. Just as she pieced the nightmarish puzzle together, the air shifted again, an unsettling knock reverberating through her home. Tommy clutched her tightly, fear etched across his tiny face. "Mom!" As the door creaked open, shadows invaded her sanctuary, and she felt every piece of darkness converge, her heart racing wildly, her breath quickening as she was about to face whatever lurked behind that door. And she knew, deep in the marrow of her bones, the horror had only just begun. The door swung open, revealing a shroud of darkness, a pervading void. Sarah squinted into the night but could see nothing, just an emptiness that felt alive. Every instinct urged her to slam the door shut, but Tommy's grip on her waist tightened. "Mom, don't," he whispered, his voice trembling. Her heart thudded in her chest, she bit her lip, forcing herself to breathe while heat coursed through her veins. "Hello? Is anyone there?" she called, knowing full well her voice wavered. The wind was her only answer, swirling around them like a taunt. She could feel it, an electric charge in the air, hovering at the edge of her sanity. What if something was out there, something waiting for her to make a mistake? Then she caught a glimpse, a flicker of a shape darting across the street, just beyond the reach of the troubled porch light. Was it a trick of her exhausted mind? Another shadow? But Tommy gasped, eyes wide, Mom. It's him. The shadow. Panic twisted like a knife in her gut. She slammed the door, but not before catching the fleeting sight of a figure, tall and gaunt with strange, elongated limbs. Frozen in time, she instinctively grabbed Tommy, pulling him close. Could that be who had taken Mrs. Jenkins? The thought sent dread rippling through her. She rushed to the windows, drawing the curtains tight, barricading their little home from the encroaching darkness. Everything felt wrong. She could almost sense the shadows sneering outside. How had it come to this? The warm comfort of home now felt like a cage, closing in on them with every passing moment. Her phone buzzed. Glancing down, she saw a series of texts from a friend back at work, all equally frantic. Have you seen the news? More disappearances in Oak Hollow. Something is happening. People are saying it's not just kids. The breath caught in her throat. What did that mean? She could picture the conversations, hushed whispers in the break room. As she read, a sense of urgency washed over her. She had to get Tommy to safety, far away from this madness. Tommy, we're leaving, she said, her voice firm and final. She grabbed her purse, her heart racing with the weight of their isolation. But then the lights flickered again, plunging the room into temporary darkness. She glanced out the window again, and that same shadow was closer now. Just outside the edge of their driveway, it stood perfectly still. It was watching them, mocking them. Mom, it wants to get in. Tommy whimpered, burying his face against her arms. A chill caressed her skin, creeping in like the whisper of death. The air felt charged, thick enough to cut. She half turned to reassure him when a crash erupted from the back of the house. Glass shattered, a window giving way with a sickening splintering sound. Sarah's heart stopped, adrenaline rushed in like fire. Stay here. She hissed, squaring her shoulders, torn between fear and the instinct to protect. Driven by a relentless pull of dread, she snatched a kitchen knife, ready to face whatever shadow threatened her family. Just as she stepped toward the kitchen, she heard it, a sound like whispering, low and creeping, intertwining with the wind. Come out, it seemed to taunt, a beckoning echoing along the edges of her sanity. She paused, her breath hitching in her throat. What had she unshackled? Mom! Tommy cried again, shattering her concentration. Don't go. In that moment, the air grew heavy, and shadows drew closer. What awaited her out in the dark? She had to decide, fight or flee. Fear twisted her thoughts. But whether they stayed or went, she knew only one thing for certain: the nightmare was just beginning. As she turned back, the knife raised high, a terrible realization filled her. We don't just have to survive, we need to escape this place, she whispered. A scraping noise echoed from inside the walls, followed by a voice that made her blood run cold. There's no escape, not for you. And as the darkness closed in, she knew they were running out of time. The rent in silence was thunderous. Sarah's heart raced as she turned toward the back of the house, gripping the knife like a lifeline. The whispering grew louder, more insistent, brushing against her ears like the icy breath of something unseen. No escape, the voice taunted, chilling her to her core. Tommy, I need you to be quiet, okay? She whispered hastily, her eyes darting to the kitchen doorway, the threshold between safety and the wrapped darkness beyond. He didn't respond, but she saw him nod, his small frame trembling against the coldness that enveloped them. They huddled in the living room, the dim glow of the porch light flickering like a heartbeat. Just outside, the figure moved again, its silhouette grotesque against the shadows. It seemed to twist and elongate, a ghastly marionette dancing to some morbid tune. Mom! Tommy squeaked, panic rising in his voice. What if it comes in here? I won't let it, she said, trying to muster confidence she didn't feel. But even as she spoke, the reality sank in, cold and heavy. If that thing could break through a window, what was stopping it from simply walking in through the door? Another crash echoed from the kitchen, a shattering noise that reverberated through the bones of the house. She glanced over the room, realizing all their paths to escape were cut off. The front door, the back door, even the windows. They were effectively trapped with whatever that was outside. "Let us move," she commanded, urgency driving her. She wanted to reach the basement, the only place she could think of that might offer shelter from the thing creeping outside. Gripping Tommy's wrist, she led him towards the basement door. With every step, the shadows seemed to stretch. The whispering grew into a cacophony, a weird harmony that mingled with the howling wind, making her dizzy. "Come out, join us," it beckoned, and the malevolence of it sent her stomach twisting. "Are you ready?" She needed him to hold on, to trust her with every essence of his being. Tommy nodded again, aghast but determined, his youthful bravery shining through his fear. With a swift push, Sarah flung open the basement door. It creaked ominously, a warning she chose to ignore. The stairs descended into darkness, each step threatening to swallow them whole. She took a deep breath, wishing she could gather light as she would air into her lungs. "Hold tight, all right?" They stepped inside, her heart racing as she felt the cool air brush against them like a shroud. Just then, they heard a scraping sound above them, slow and deliberate. It echoed in the hollow space, sending shivers along her spine. "What is that?" Tommy whispered, squeezing her hand tighter. "I don't know, sweetheart," she answered. But in her gut, she felt a raw terror swell. It was the sound of something moving, maybe the thing from outside had found them. Each scrape brought closer the reality of their doom. As she reached the bottom of the stairs, shadows danced at the edges of her sight. She barely caught the glint of something sharp and unyielding in the dark, a forgotten tool or perhaps... "Mom." Tommy's voice trembled. "It's here." Dread pooled in her stomach, and just as she turned the last corner, she saw it. A figure swayed, its elongated limbs twitching as if testing life. The hollow eyes fixed on her, and the world seemed to drown in that black gaze. "Tommy, we have to go," she shouted, adrenaline surging. But before they could move, that horrible whisper returned, rising like a tide, crashing over them. "You cannot run, you cannot hide, you belong to us now." In that horrible moment, realization clawed at her. This wasn't just a wrestling presence outside, it was hunting, searching, waiting for the right moment to strike. They weren't merely in danger, they were being hunted. "Run!" Sarah shouted, and with that, they launched into the darkness, unaware of where they might go but utterly determined to escape a fate too terrifying to fathom. As they sprinted deeper into the basement, the whispers followed, a haunting chorus that echoed, "There's no escape, no safety, only us." What lay at the end of their flight remained a mystery, hope or doom. The shadows were thickening, and Sarah's heart drummed a frantic rhythm. Would they make it to the light? But something snapped in the distance, a heavy, ominous sound that promised the worst was yet to come. As they dashed deeper into the basement, the darkness pressed in around them like a crushing weight. Sarah could barely see the damp concrete floor beneath her feet. The whispers became an echoing chant, amplifying with each pounding heartbeat. "We are coming, we are watching, Mom, where do we go?" Tommy's voice cracked, his grip tightening as he fought against the terror rising in his throat. "I don't know, just keep moving," she urged, her mind racing. Suddenly, the whispers broke into a cacophony of laughter, mocking and eerie. It was as if the shadows themselves were alive, breathing, waiting for something or someone. The air smelled stale and thick, a sign of long-forgotten dread buried down here. Sarah remembered the old tool shed in the far corner of the basement, a place they rarely ventured. "Over there." She pointed, guiding Tommy through the dimness. Each step felt like treading through molasses, the tension and fear paralyzing her limbs. What if the figure could get to them before they reached safety? As they approached the shed, the faint sounds from above morphed into a crash, splintering wood against wood. The kitchen door collapsed inward, furious pops and snaps came like fragmented thunderclaps. "Oh God," she gasped. Tommy clung to her side, eyes wide, as they reached the tool shed. She wrestled with the rusted handle, pushing it open with a groan that sounded like a scream in the enveloping shadows. Inside, the moonlight barely penetrated, but it was enough for Sarah to see an old, heavy hammer balanced precariously on a rack. She snatched it up, the weight comforting in her sweat-drenched palms. "Mom, what if it finds us?" Tommy whispered, and she could hear the tremor in his voice. "We won't let it, I promise," she replied, forcing a whisper of confidence. The air grew thicker. The whispers intensified, swirling into a maelstrom of disembodied voices. "Let us in," they crooned, seductive and violent, inviting yet terrifying. "Mom, it sounds so close," Tommy stammered. Just as she was about to move, a loud crash echoed above them, rattling the shelves. A sharp gasp escaped Sarah's lips as the door they had just entered through swung wide open. A figure loomed at the entrance, dark and swirling with shadows, a gaping maw that seemed to inhale the very light of the basement. "Join us," it hissed, its voice an awful marionette of sound. The figure stepped closer, revealing an inhuman face that twisted and warped, its hollow eyes searching for prey. "Run!" Sarah shouted again, her heart racing. She grabbed Tommy's wrist tightly and pulled him further into the shed, barely aware of the tools and debris threatening to trip them, her instincts guiding her. They ducked behind an old toolbox, the world narrowing down to the tense moment that felt suspended in time. Tommy was shaking, breathing heavy and quick, as they pressed against the cold, damp wall. "Please," Tommy whimpered, "what if it finds us?" A soft creak resonated behind them. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. The overwhelming darkness shifted, something was moving, something with long limbs and malicious intent. "Do you think it knows?" Tommy asked, voice trembling like a frail leaf in the wind. "I don't know, but it can't find us here." Another crash sounded, sending splinters flying from the tool shed entrance. Sarah's heart raced as she peered over the edge of the toolbox. The figure's eyes gleamed like a predator's in the dark, scanning the room, revealing a knowing smile that dripped with malice. "What do we do?" Tommy's voice was barely a whisper now, almost lost in the cacophony. The shadows seemed to draw closer, encroaching upon their fragile sanctuary. Sarah felt the walls pressing in, the air thickening with dread. "We can't stay here, we have to find a way out." The door frame splintered, threatening to give way against the weight of whatever entity pressed against it. Just as Sarah prepared to make a desperate move, a sudden burst of light flooded the basement, a flickering bulb overhead sputtering to life. For a split second, she saw the figure recoil, but something in her gut told her that wasn't the end. In that moment of unexpected brilliance, she caught sight of something else lurking in the corner of the shed, the glint of metallic lines interlaced with darkness that sent chills crawling down her spine. "Mom," Tommy whispered again, but this time it was more an invocation of hope than fear. The beam wavered, and just as quickly as it had appeared, the light dimmed again. Darkness engulfed them once more, the figure's monstrous form taking shape closer now. What if the light vanished completely, swallowing them in eternal night? There was only one way to find out. Sarah closed her eyes, steeling herself against the chaotic whispering that grew louder and more insistent. "Take my hand," she urged Tommy. And as they braced for an unwelcome confrontation, they were left to wonder what escaped the moment they dared to step back into the light. They pressed their palms together, the sweat slick between their fingers, their hearts pounding in unison as the hushed whispers clawed at the edges of their sanity. "Mom, please." Tommy's voice trembled like a distant siren, barely cutting through the thick, suffocating darkness that threatened to swallow them whole. "Just hold on to me," Sarah whispered back, squeezing his hand tighter. Then they heard it. The echo of breathless murmurs materialized into phrases, taunting and cruel, as if mocking their struggle for light. "You cannot hide forever." A piercing chill settled into the pit of Sarah's stomach. She could feel it, a deep, invasive dread that wormed its way into her being. Every nerve ending sang with alarm. This was no simple nightmare. Whatever that thing was, it was real, and it was hungry. The walls of the shed groaned, the weight of the darkness pressing down harder, and outside, shadows flitted like broken-winged birds. The figure loomed now, barely discernible, but the gleam of sharp teeth flashed through the lingering mist. Mom Tommy's voice was tight, strained against the rising pressure around them. I can't breathe, Tommy. Just breathe, Sarah urged, forcing calm into her own voice even as her heart raced. Somehow, they needed to forge through this haze and escape. But how? The metallic lines she had glimpsed earlier pulsed softly, a faint thrum in the darkness, beckoning her from the corner of the shed. It felt dangerous, yet somehow alluring. Could it provide a way out? Tommy, she breathed, making a decision. Stay close. She edged forward, dragging Tommy with her, every muscle taut with trepidation. As they neared the corner, the shadows fanned out like swirling tendrils, almost alive, attempting to wrap around her ankles and pull her back. The whispers grew frenzied, chanting now, join us. They rose and fell, a symphony of horror echoing through the very structure of the basement. She reached out, half expectant, half terrified. Her fingers closed around the metal cold and unyielding. It felt like hope wrapped in bastardized steel. When she pulled it from the gloom, the object revealed itself, a rusty old lantern, its glass cracked, but potential flickered within it like a heartbeat. What is that? Tommy asked, fear drawing sharp edges around his wide eyes. A light. It might be enough to hold it back, Sarah replied with a frail determination. She fumbled for the lighter, heart racing with every desperate moment spent. Could it really work? Behind them, the figure crushed the remnants of the tool shed door, spilling shadows into their refuge, a beast smothering every flicker of hope. Sarah's hands shook, sweat drenching her palms as she struck the lighter. It flared to life and she held it to the lantern's wick, praying that a brighter flame fought back the shadows, illuminating the room, mapping out the horrific contours of their pursuer. But for a heartbeat, it flickered and faltered and panic seized her heart. Mom! Tommy screamed, pointing. The figure lunged, an embodiment of raw terror, long, black limbs stretching toward them, fingers like knives reaching for their warmth. The light flickered once more, breathing life into their fear, as Sarah jammed the lantern's base until it finally caught, flooding the basement with an eerie glow. The creature halted, recoiling, its face twisting into a snarl, angry and desperate. It snapped its jagged teeth, the sound echoing like thunder against every wall. Then, as if sensing defeat, it backed away into the shadows, but the whispers grew louder, a chorus of rage and despair. You can't escape us, you belong to us. Where do we go now? Tommy's voice shrunk to a whisper, the gravity of their situation setting in. I don't know, she faltered, scanning the basement, searching for an exit, a chance to flee this nightmare. The shadows beckoned from every corner, waiting for her to weaken, to falter once more. But as they prepared to leave the shed, the flickering bulb overhead shuddered violently. Cracks spiderwebbed across the old glass. They were still trapped, and something in the air shifted. A deeper darkness began to coalesce around them. Mom Tommy's voice faltered once again. She looked down at him, a thousand unspoken fears racing between them. Then, without warning, the shadows surged forward with a tumultuous force, and the lantern sputtered in warning. Run! Sarah screamed, and they bolted. But in that frantic moment of escape, they collided with something new, a thick, pulsing wall of darkness that felt almost sentient. Release them! A voice thundered, distinct amidst the chaos, sending shockwaves through the very fabric of their reality. Mom, what is happening? And as cold panic seized their hearts in that moment, Sarah felt an overwhelming question rise within her. What had she awakened in the darkness, and would they ever be free? The darkness tightened around them, pressing in like a vice. Sarah could feel the weight of it, a tangible force suffocating her thoughts. The lantern glowed dimly, its light flickering like a heartbeat ready to stall. With each shudder, the air crackled with an awful energy, as if it was alive, a beast lying in wait just beyond reach. A horrible thought flickered in her mind. Were they truly in control anymore? Mom! I can't see anything," Tommy cried, his words cutting through the thick silence. "Just keep holding onto my hand." Panic dripped from Sarah's voice, urgency crashing against her resolve. They stumbled back, blinded by an abyss that seemed eager to swallow them whole. The whispers erupted into a cacophony, warping around them like a dense fog. "Your light is weak, your time is near, stay back," she shouted, swinging the lantern in wide arcs, desperately trying to push against the consuming shadows. But they only laughed, a twisted, cruel sound that echoed back, feeding on her fear. For a moment, everything went quiet. Even the sinister whispering receded, leaving them cloaked in a suffocating stillness, the kind that masked impending horrors. Sarah narrowed her eyes, straining to see what lay beyond the threshold of their fragile sanctuary. And then she saw it. A movement in the darkness, slinking and twisting, something that shouldn't exist. Her heart thudded in her chest, every instinct screaming for her to run. "Sarah," Tommy whispered, his grip loosening. "Don't look away." She yanked him closer, her voice biting as they inched backward. But the darkness was relentless, curling around their ankles like smoke, pulling them toward the hideous truth. "Do you want the truth?" The voice rolled over them, dripping with malice. "You've disturbed forces far beyond your understanding. The darkness hungers, and we are its servants." A shriek escaped Tommy's lips as shadows danced forward, melding into a grotesque visage, a gaping maw of icy teeth and hollow eyes. Sarah's instincts kicked in, and she raised the lantern, its light wavering like a candle in a storm. But it fought back, illuminating the creature just enough to show the contours of its grotesque form, a swirling tapestry of nightmares. "Look at me," it howled, its breath an icy wind. "Feel your fear, embrace it." An overpowering urge surged within Sarah, pulling at her mind. Was this beast telling the truth? Had they unleashed something that should never have broken free? In that moment of hesitation, the lantern flickered violently, dimming as if sharing in her doubt. "Run!" she yelled again, adrenaline surging. But the shadows surged closer, forming a barrier around them, packing tighter, urging them to succumb to despair. Panic overtook her, and she raced for the flickering door, dragging Tommy by force. The shadows closed in around their heels, their whispers escalating into a thunderous chorus, demanding they stay. "Join us, become one, don't fight." The doorway loomed ahead like a shimmering portal to freedom, but it was just as treacherous. They lunged forward only for the light to flicker one last time, turning all to a deafening darkness. The air was thick, a choking fog, as Sarah felt her heart pound in her ears. Then she saw it, so close yet impossibly far, the subtle glow of a second lantern, nestled in a recess of the wall beyond the door. Hope danced like a flame in her chest. "Over there, Tommy!" she shouted, pointing toward the faint beckoning light, urging him to move faster. But the shadows seemed to sense her determination. They writhed angrily, the creature shrieking as its mouth gaped wide in fury, revealing rows of jagged teeth and darkness. "You cannot escape what belongs to you." Just as they reached the worn handle of the door, the shadows lunged, wrapping around Sarah's waist in a vice grip of dread and fury. "No!" she screamed, pulling against the night that sought to envelop them. But as she fought, she realized with horror her grip on Tommy was slipping. "Mom!" His voice fractured in the gloom, echoing her own rising fear. With every ounce of strength, she threw her body against the door, but the shadows tightened, coldness radiating through her bones. "You will understand the truth soon enough," the creature hissed, its voice a twisted mockery of compassion. And in that moment, she knew. Not just fear, but something far worse lurked. Maybe it wasn't just the darkness they had awakened. In a final surge, she felt something shift deep within her, an awakened force she had never acknowledged. "Tommy!" she yelled, hope morphing into defiance. "We are getting out of here." But as their sanctuary crumbled, the lantern's flame sputtered once more, threatening to extinguish with the feeble flicker of their faith. "Will you fight or yield?" "The choice is ours," came the ominous whisper, Heavy with cold certainty, clenching her jaw, Sarah braced herself for whatever came next, caught in a moment where every instinct gripped her with adrenaline. Would she succumb to the darkness, or would the truth finally guide them to freedom? "Hold on tight!" she shouted, emotions crashing like waves through her mind. But would she be ready to face what lay beyond together, or not at all? And as they pushed through the threshold, she could feel deep inside what the shadows were entreating to reveal, whether she was truly ready for it. The moment they crossed the threshold, Sarah felt an electrifying jolt, as though the very air was charged with an unfathomable energy. The light of the lantern flickered weakly, casting warped shadows that danced on the walls like grotesque marionettes. She had expected panic and despair to release their grip, but a suffocating darkness threatened to swallow them both anew. "Mom! Where are we?" Tommy's voice quivered, fear echoing in the hollow space. "Right here, Tommy. Just stay close," she replied, though her words felt hollow, lost in the confusion. As they ventured deeper into the room, a low hum began to form, vibrating through the floor like a distant heartbeat. With each step, Sarah's skin prickled, and an instinct loomed in the back of her mind: they were not alone. Suddenly, the hum crescendoed into a chorus of tormented whispers, swirling around them like tendrils of smoke. "Why did you come? You weren't meant to disturb us. Shut up!" she shouted back, her voice shaking. She was grappling for control, but the darkness felt palpable, an oppressive presence weighing down her spirit. "Tommy, listen to me," she breathed, their hands tightly clasped as they crept forward. "We need to find the second lantern. It'll guide us." A flicker in the corner of her eye caught her attention. The glow pulsed softly, almost inviting, from a shadowed alcove to her right. Summoning all her courage, she stepped toward it, dragging her son along. But the hum morphed into anguished groans, reverberating through her core. "Do not seek the light, it holds the truth you fear most. No. We have to." Sarah yelled against the din, desperation fueling her steps. As she reached the alcove, her heart sank. There sat another lantern, but it flickered erratically, almost taunting her, casting bizarre shapes against the walls as if warning her of the horrors that lay ahead. "Sarah, I can't do this," Tommy whimpered, his little voice cracking. "You can. We'll light it together," she urged, eyes blazing with a fierce determination. On 3 they counted, hands trembling as they struck a match, its flame coming alive. The second lantern glimmered, igniting the darkness with an ethereal light. For a heart-stopping moment, shadows recoiled, retreating momentarily from the fierce illumination. But something shifted. The whispers grew louder, transforming into a cacophony of madness. "Light cannot save you. The truth lies within." The walls seemed to close in, inching ominously closer, pressing against their bodies. "Look!" Tommy pointed, his voice a frightened squeak. Tendrils of darkness emerged once more, darting toward them like serpents, skyrocketing toward the light. In that instant, the creature's voice boomed through the chamber: "Let go, surrender to the truth." Instinctively, Sarah tightened her grip on the lantern, feeling empowered yet terrified. She glanced at Tommy, whose wide eyes reflected despair and confusion. "Mom, it's too much," he cried, tears streaming down his cheeks. The warmth of their combined light flickered uncertainly as shadows began twisting upward, taking on the forms of the people they had lost, faces twisted in torment, urging them to give in. "Remember," Sarah gasped, voice thick with emotion. "We aren't alone. We have each other." She held the lantern high, willing its light to pierce through the darkness. But just as it seemed to work, the creature lunged forth, its features blending into the shadows, mouth agape in a chilling scream. "You will never escape. The truth is yours, forever." Through the blinding chaos, Sarah found her footing, urging Tommy to run, lunging toward the door she thought would lead them back. But as they neared, a chilling realization dawned: the door was gone, replaced by a solid wall of shadow, reshaping before them. "What now?" Tommy's voice trembled in her ear, overwhelmed by the encroaching darkness. Hold on. She shouted, heart racing in her chest, the lantern trembling in her grasp. With desperation coursing through her veins, Sarah focused on one thought: they had to find a way out. And as she met the stares of the tortured figures looming from the shadows, a realization hit her. Sometimes, facing the truth meant confronting something far darker than fear itself. There, trapped within the web of their anguish, she understood the shadows could reveal their true power or lead them to unspeakable horrors. As the echoes of their merge grew louder, Sarah clung tighter, knowing the battle for their souls had only just begun. How much longer could they resist before the truth revealed itself? The air thickened, pulsating with an energy that felt not just real, but alive. Sarah's heart raced as her gaze darted around the room, searching for a shred of clarity amid encroaching shadows. The whispers morphed into cries, the walls trembled as if breathing, and the ground beneath her feet seemed to tremble. "Mom! We have to get out." Tommy's voice broke through her racing thoughts like glass shattering under pressure. She turned to him, her heart twisting at the sight of his tears glistening in the dim light of the lanterns. I know," she whispered, her own voice wavering. "But we can't." Just a sudden blast of icy wind whipped through the chamber, extinguishing their fragile light for a heartbeat. In that moment of total darkness, Sarah felt a hand, icy and gaunt, brush against her cheek. She recoiled, fear surging through her as the screams intensified, filling her mind with dread. "Where is the truth?" the voice hissed, slithering around them like smoke. "Enough!" Sarah shouted, rage igniting her spirit. "We did not come here for you. We came for the light." The shadows twisted and flowed, shifting into a myriad of forms, some familiar, others grotesque and foreign. They flickered in and out of existence, faces contorted in silent screams, each one drawing closer, as if hungry for their despair. Tommy squeezed her hand tighter. "What if the truth is what they say?" he whimpered. Sarah's resolve shook for an instant. What if this was all a warning? What if discovering the truth meant losing everything? God, she couldn't bear the thought. "We'll figure it out together, Tommy." Just as she spoke, the lantern burst back to life, illuminating a path before them, thick with shadows yet faintly shimmering like starlight. They exchanged a glance filled with uncertainty but also with the slightest flicker of hope. "Let us go." They rushed forward, their feet pounding against the chilling ground. The whispers turned to shrieks, clawing at their resolve. "Fleeing won't help. The truth will come for you." But something powerful surged within Sarah. Trust in the light. The lantern was not just a tool, it was their bond. The shadows clawed at them, reaching for their souls, but she knew they had to focus. They had to take a stand. As they sprinted down the newfound path, the figures of the damned scuttled around them, fading into the corners of the lantern's glow. Sarah felt a pull, a tug that led her toward a looming archway in the distance. It glimmered faintly, promising a way out but also whispering of deeper horrors to come. "Mom! Please don't stop!" Tommy cried, his voice strained against the rising panic. "I want tea!" Sarah shouted back, plunging forward with renewed fervor. But as they neared the archway, a loud crash erupted behind them. The shadows, enraged, morphed into a solid mass, slamming against the walls with a hollow thud that sent tremors through the floor. "Turn back!" the creature roared, its voice deep and reverberating like the very fabric of reality was tearing apart. "You belong here now. Don't listen!" Sarah screamed, dragging Tommy forward with a fierce determination. They finally reached the archway, but at that moment, it warped and warped again, shifting as if it held its own twisted sentience. "Let us jump through," Tommy suggested, fear glinting in his wide eyes. "On the count of 3. As they counted, darkness swirled more fiercely. With a final echo, they launched themselves into the archway, and everything went black. They landed hard. Breathless and disoriented, they found themselves in a new chamber, a mirror to the previous one but distorted. The familiar pulsating energy felt heavier now. In the silence that swallowed them, it finally dawned on Sarah: the lanterns, the whispers, the shadows, they were all part of a relentless cycle, a trial of truths. What lay ahead pushed the boundaries of their understanding of fear. "Nobody escapes," the voice echoed, lingering like a thick fog. As the figures began to coalesce around them once more, sucking the warmth from the lantern, Sarah's heart pounded. They were not just battling for their lives anymore, they were wrestling against the very fabric of reality. "Mom!" Tommy's scream echoed against the walls as shadows lunged forward. But the truth wasn't just a revelation, it was awaiting its moment to plunge them deeper into despair. What horrors lay beyond the next turn? Tommy's voice was a siren, shrill and haunting, reverberating off the warped walls of their new prison. The shadows twisted and lunged as if they were alive, their dark tendrils reaching desperately for the flickering lantern that was their only source of light. "Run!" Sarah shouted, adrenaline clawing at her throat. She tugged Tommy's hand as they stumbled backward, the shadows slithering closer, swirling with malevolence. The weight of the dim light seemed heavier now, as if the shadows themselves conspired to snuff it out. With trembling legs, they darted along the walls of the chamber, searching for another exit. Each step sent shaky ripples of energy through the ground, mixing their fear with the pulse of the darkness. Ghostly faces began to emerge from the walls, twisted in agony, their mouths open in silent screams that gnawed at Sarah's sanity. "Mom, I see a door!" Tommy yelled, pointing towards a faint outline at the far end. It shimmered, flickering, like a mirage, straining against the oppressive darkness. Without thinking, Sarah surged forward, embracing the hope that flickered in Tommy's eyes. She held tight to the lantern, its weak glow illuminating the path just enough for them to navigate the horrors surrounding them. But as they sprinted, the voice echoed once more, now mocking, dripping with disdain. "You cannot escape your fate. You are merely delaying the inevitable. We will escape." Sarah shouted defiantly, terror coursing through her veins as she tightened her grip on Tommy. "Keep running, don't look back." Just as they approached the door, the air thickened until it was almost suffocating. Shadows gushed around them, clawing at their clothes, as if trying to siphon their very essence. Tommy stumbled, his foot catching on something unseen. "No!" Sarah cried as she felt him slip from her grasp. She spun around, her heart racing. The shadows shrieked with delight, swallowing Tommy in an instant. Panic surged through her as she lunged back, stretching her arms toward him. "Tommy!" His terrified face, framed by the blackness, appeared for just a moment before the shadows consumed him whole. "Let him go!" She screamed, a wild, primal fear ripping through her body. Despair washed over her, threatening to drown her in sorrow. But somehow, she sensed it, the darkness could feel her grief, feeding off it like a parasite. Determined not to succumb, Sarah pressed on toward the door, a guttural cry escaping her throat. Her heart raced, thundering against her ribs as she flung herself against the door. With each frantic push, the lantern flickered, casting eerie shadows that danced across the chamber, a haunting ballet of dread. Suddenly, a jolt of warmth flooded through her as the door gave way. The cold night air rushed in, clashing violently with the frozen whispers that seemed to scream from within. She barely hesitated as she stumbled across the threshold, clutching the lantern, praying it would protect her. "Mom!" Tommy's voice echoed, trapped but faint. "Tommy!" She screamed, spinning around, desperate to return, but the door slammed shut behind her with a deafening sound, sealing him within the nightmare. She plunged into a new world cloaked in full darkness, her breath hitching in her throat as fear settled in the depths of her soul. She found herself on a narrow, winding path that seemed endless, surrounded by tall, twisted trees that loomed menacingly against the dim light of the lantern. Each pulse of its glow revealed fleeting images, a twisted figure, a reflection of her own face twisted in anguish, a whisper of secrets only the shadows would know. "Where are you?" she called, her voice trembling. With every step forward, the weight of loss pressed down harder. The lantern's light flickered and sputtered. Was it a sign of hope or a herald of doom? Then, from the pitch black ahead, a pair of glowing eyes emerged, piercing and unyielding. They watched her, calculating, ready to judge. "Welcome," the voice hissed, slinking like a shadow born of nightmares. "You now face the truth." Sarah's stomach dropped as an overwhelming sense of dread washed over her, and she realized this was only the beginning. What truth awaited her in this relentless night? What horrors lay waiting in the room beyond? The darkness bore down on Sarah, heavy and relentless, as she tightened her grip on the flickering lantern. She didn't know how long she had wandered the twisted path, but the shadows surrounding her felt deeper, richer in malice. With each tentative step, memory crashed against her resolve. Tommy's terrified face haunted her lost. The sharp grip of despair threatened to swallow her whole. "Mom!" His voice echoed somewhere alongside her, a glimmer of warmth against the chill of despair. "I'm here," she shouted, though her heart sank at the thought he may never hear her again. She pushed forward, keeping the light steady, a fragile beacon in the overwhelming night. "I won't let you down," she whispered to herself, feeling the fight surge beneath the weight of her fear. And with determination, she pressed on. The trees on either side loomed higher, whispering attractions of forgotten nightmares. The light of her lantern pulsed like a dying star, its glow flickering eerily against gnarled branches stretching like the fingers of the dead. She felt the eyes watching her grow larger, hungry with anticipation. "Face the truth or lose yourself." The voice slithered through the air, taunting her. The path twisted unnaturally, leading her into darkness that felt alive, shifting beneath her feet. The urge to flee stormed through her, but she fought to stay grounded. Ahead, something shifted in the shadow silhouettes that morphed into familiar figures, Mrs. Jenkins, Jack, and even Tommy. They beckoned, malicious smiles twisting their faces as if the darkness had puppeteered them from her worst fears. "Sarah, join us," they echoed in a haunting chorus. "No!" she shouted, clutching the lantern tighter as if it were a shield. "Tommy needs me." She turned away from their grasp, desperation guiding her legs. But doubt crept in. How much longer could she resist? The lantern sputtered low as she stumbled onto a clearing that was void of trees. In stark contrast stood an ancient archway, beckoning from the depths of darkness. "Is this the truth?" she thought, a momentary flicker of hope sparking within. She began moving toward it, determined to find Tommy. Stepping through the threshold felt like crossing into another world. Bright light flooded around her, illuminating the faces of those she had lost, each one twisted in agony, urging her to join them. "Why do you resist? Embrace what is yours. Stay back," she shouted, recoiling from their grasping hands, but this time, the fear refused to retreat. The light around her began to fade, and the shadows crept closer, threatening to reclaim her, to erase her very being. "I won't give in," she screamed, burning with anger, raising the lantern like a torch against the chaos folding in. Suddenly, an uncomplicated but stubborn thought surged: could they be freed without embracing the darkness? "I choose love. I choose my son," she shouted, her words echoed fiercely as warmth radiated from within her, the faces twisted in rage and hatred as they recoiled from the declaration, the shadows shaking with fury. The lantern flickered. The figures clawing at her faded slightly, giving her space amidst the chaos. "Tommy!" she screamed again, desperation fueling her purpose. Clenching her eyes shut, she steadied herself and pressed into the pulsing darkness. "I won't let you take him." She dashed further down the winding path, her heart thrumming fiercely against the weight of her fear. The shadows shrieked furiously, but she refused to look back. Then she heard it, a whisper, soft but real. "Mom! Over here!" Tommy's voice cut through the noise, striking her heart like a lighthouse-piercing fog. Without hesitation, she sprang forward toward where she heard it. Slashing through the shadows, she finally broke into a clearing. There, tethered by dark tendrils that twisted around him, was Tommy, tears shimmering like captured stars in the dim light. "Mom!" he cried, reaching for her. "Hold on, sweetheart." She lunged forward, the lantern exploding with light, casting away the shadows and illuminating the horror holding them captive. "Let him go!" she yelled, the lantern's glow intensifying as if fueled by her fierce maternal love. In that blinding light, she saw the figure controlling the shadows, the monstrous entity, its jagged mouth twisted in fury and fear. As it lunged forward, the light enveloped the darkness, revealing its twisting form, shifting and blackening. Shadows howled and writhed, tearing apart under the power of the lantern. "You cannot escape!" it roared, but it was too late. The circle of light expanded, consuming the shadows until they shrieked away with a final, defiant echo. All at once, Sarah could breathe again, sweet, real air filling her lungs. "Mom!" Tommy cried again, and with outstretched arms, he dashed to her as she dropped the lantern, wrapping him tightly in her embrace, feeling their hearts beat against the weight of each other. I got you," she whispered, tears of relief flooding her face. The shadows were gone, the air around them felt lighter, rejuvenating. They emerged into the dim light of dawn, the early sun breaking through the remnants of darkness, chasing away the night. "Are we safe?" Tommy asked softly, hope glistening in his innocent eyes. "For now, yes." Sarah smiled, the warmth of the sun touch igniting the bruises on their souls. As they stood together, renewing their bond in a world now free from terrifying shadows, an unwavering certainty nestled in her heart. They made it. They had faced the darkness, the terrifying truths, and emerged stronger together. "No matter what, we will always have each other," she promised, looking into Tommy's eyes, his laughter mingling with light as they stepped into the warmth of the new day. And somewhere deep in the shadows, remnants of the dark entity faded into silence, waiting for another chance. But for now, Sarah and Tommy were free. You need to subscribe now. Don't wait another second to hit that button. Join our community for more exclusive stories you won't want to miss. Smash that like button to feed the algorithm. Every click helps us share these tales far and wide. Flood the comments section with your reactions, tell us what you think of the ending, and share your theories. We want to hear from you. And if you know friends who would love a haunting story, share this video with at least 5 of them immediately. Let us keep the magic alive. Thank you for being part of this wild ride.